I never thought I'd see someone bold enough to walk onto my private ranch, raise a can of pepper spray, and aim it straight at my service dog's face. But that's exactly what happened. It was a warm Saturday afternoon. I was fixing the side fence near the southern end of my land, and Buddy, my golden retriever and service dog, was lying close by, wearing his bright red vest with the words, "Service Dog, Do Not Distract," in big white letters. He was calm, just resting beside me, not bothering a soul. Then out of nowhere, this woman, who I'd later find out was Karen from the HOA board, stormed up the dirt path like she owned the place. She didn't even knock. She didn't call. She just came, uninvited, walking fast, waving her arms, shouting about community standards and animal safety violations. Before I could even get a full sentence out, she reached into her oversized leopard print handbag, pulled out a pink can of pepper spray and sprayed it right at Buddy's face. I screamed, "No!" and lunged forward, but it was too late. Buddy let out the most heartbreaking yelp I'd ever heard, his head jerking back, paws scratching at his eyes. I dropped to my knees, grabbing him as fast as I could, trying to cover his eyes and wipe away the spray. He was whimpering, shaking, trying to press his face into my chest to escape the pain. My blood was boiling. Karen just stood there, nose in the air like she did something righteous, yelling, "That dog is a threat. You people think just slapping a vest on a mutt makes it special." That's when I pulled out my phone with my shaking hands and took a photo of her standing there, can still in her hand, Buddy crying in my lap. She didn't even try to hide it. She looked right at my camera and said, "Go ahead and call whoever you want. I run this neighborhood." But she didn't know who she was messing with or what law she just broke. That moment, my service dog in agony and Karen still shouting at me on my own ranch, was burned into my memory forever. And that's how it all started. Let me take you back to how it all led up to this madness. I'm Jake Walker, 36, Navy veteran, served 12 years before I got injured overseas and came back home to start fresh. I bought a ranch on the outskirts of town, just under 5 acres of quiet land, some livestock, and space to breathe. My golden retriever Buddy was assigned to me through a veteran support program after my deployment. He's more than just a dog. He can sense when my anxiety spikes or when a flashback hits. He's trained to pull me out of it and bring me back to reality. Without Buddy, I'd still be waking up in cold sweats every night. When I bought the ranch, I didn't realize it was under the thumb of the Green Hills HOA. Technically, the ranch was outside the HOA's original map, but over the years they'd sneakily redrawn the boundary lines and now claimed my place as part of their territory. I wasn't interested in HOA drama. I just wanted peace. So I ignored most of their junk mail and passive-aggressive newsletters. That was my mistake. Things started going sideways when I put up a small "Veteran Lives Here, No Trespassing" sign on my gate. A few days later, I found it bent backward, like someone had yanked it hard. Then I noticed my mailbox had been stuffed with HOA rulebooks and friendly reminders about dog licensing, fencing paint colors, and lawn lengths, none of which applied to a ranch this size. Next came the unexpected courtesy visits. First, a guy named Greg from the HOA board showed up, unannounced, and told me I needed to remove the American flag I had hanging on my barn because it wasn't an approved flagpole. I laughed at him and told him to get off my property. The second visit was worse. Karen showed up for the first time. She introduced herself like she was royalty, all fake smiles and a clipboard clutched in her hand. She pointed at my gravel driveway and said it was an eyesore and might lower community property values. I told her politely that I was outside of their enforcement area and that I wasn't bound to follow their aesthetic preferences. That's when her smile disappeared. Karen told me word for word, "Oh, we'll see about that." From that moment on, things escalated. I started noticing tire tracks in areas no one should be driving. My livestock feed bins were tampered with. Someone threw trash over my fence more than once. Buddy was barked at and scared off his routine when joggers who didn't live in the area suddenly appeared with whistles and long sticks. Still, I stayed calm. I kept documenting. I didn't want to fight, but I knew something was building. Then, last week, I got a final notice letter shoved under my barn door, an HOA violation, claiming my ranch had failed to follow communal landscaping practices, and that a hearing was scheduled to determine appropriate fines or legal action. That's when I knew they were getting bold. I prepared everything. I gathered documents, photos, satellite images showing that my property was never legally within their authority. I even consulted a lawyer friend from the VA to confirm it. I was ready for their so-called hearing. But I wasn't ready for what Karen would pull before that meeting could even happen. Back to that Saturday when she attacked Buddy. After she sprayed him, I rushed him inside, flushed his eyes with clean water, and called the emergency vet. They had me bring him in immediately. His eyes were red and swollen. The vet confirmed it was direct contact with pepper spray. As I held Buddy and he whined softly, the vet looked at me and asked, "Do you know who did this?" I nodded. "Yeah, and I'm pressing charges." What Karen didn't know is that under federal law, specifically the Americans with Disabilities Act, service dogs are protected. Harming one is a crime. But she was about to learn. By the time I got back from the vet, something strange was already waiting at my gate. A folded, crumpled HOA notice taped to my front post. It read, "Due to aggression from your animal, we are demanding the removal of said dog from the community for public safety reasons. Failure to comply will result in HOA action." That was the last straw. I took the notice, the photo, the vet's report, and all my evidence and called in a few favors, specifically to a friend of mine who now worked with the Department of Justice in the Civil Rights Division. What Karen had done wasn't just stupid, it was criminal. But she had no idea yet what kind of mess she had stepped into. I knew she was going to show up again soon. I just didn't know how bad it was going to get. 2 days later, it did. As I was walking Buddy slowly around the front of the barn, still recovering from the spray, I heard tires crunching down my drive again. It was Karen. This time, she wasn't alone. She had brought 2 HOA members with her and a sheriff's deputy. She stepped out, waving papers in her hand, shouting, "You're in violation of community animal safety codes. You have 48 hours to remove that dog, or we'll take further action." Buddy growled softly. I took a deep breath and walked toward the group. But before I could speak, Karen pointed again and yelled, "That animal attacked a child last week." I froze. She was lying, boldly, publicly, and right in front of a cop. That's where this new storm truly began. I stood frozen for a split second, my heart thudding in my chest. "Excuse me," I said, my voice sharp but steady. "What child?" Karen puffed up like a peacock, slapping her fake accusation into the deputy's hand. "This is a sworn complaint," she declared with a smug smile. "A child in the community was chased by his aggressive dog here, this so-called service dog." I locked eyes with the deputy. "My dog has been recovering from being sprayed with pepper spray. I have vet documentation and he hasn't left my property in weeks. That's a lie." The deputy's brow furrowed. He wasn't hostile, just confused. "Mr. Walker," he said, "do you mind if we speak privately?" I nodded, walking a few steps with him out of earshot. Karen huffed behind us, her 2 HOA sidekicks whispering and filming from a distance on their phones like this was some kind of episode of a drama show. The deputy kept his voice low. "Look, I don't know what kind of beef she has with you, but this complaint was filed yesterday. It's vague, no photos, no injuries listed, just a written account saying your dog ran loose and barked at a kid on Grove Street." I laughed bitterly. "I have cameras. Grove Street's a mile away from my fence line, and my dog barely stands without help since she attacked him." His eyes softened. "You got documentation for that?" "I have everything." He nodded. "Send me the video files. I can't charge anyone based on what I've seen here, just keep calm. We'll sort this out." But Karen wasn't done yet. As we wrapped up, she marched over again, still filming, and said with the snottiest voice possible, "Your little pity pet act isn't going to work forever. You're not special just because you wave a flag and wear boots." I stepped in closer. "You assaulted a federally protected service animal." She blinked, like the words didn't compute. "It's a dog. It barked. I defended myself. My fists clenched. You sprayed a non-aggressive dog in the face on private land. That's not defense, that's assault. You can't prove anything, she sneered. I smiled coldly. You're on camera, my camera, and your picture is already with the DOJ. That shut her up for a second. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Then, like a switch flipped, she shoved her clipboard into the air and said, "You'll hear from our lawyers." And with that, she stormed off, dragging her 2 HOA minions behind her like a flapping parade. I turned to the deputy. This isn't the first time she's harassed me, but it's going to be the last. He nodded. I believe you. I'll file this as a dispute and make sure no one acts on that complaint until the investigation's done. Later that night, I sat on the porch with Buddy lying next to me, still drowsy from his meds. I couldn't stop thinking about how bold she was, how reckless, and how broken the system must be if someone like her felt confident enough to lie to the law like that. That's when I got a call from Agent Ramirez at the DOJ. I saw the photos and reports, he said over the phone. Can I come by tomorrow morning? I said yes immediately. The next day, Ramirez arrived in a sleek black SUV with tinted windows. No nonsense, just him and a file folder. We sat inside my living room while Buddy rested near the fireplace, his vest folded beside him. Mr. Walker, Ramirez began, thank you for reporting the incident. Based on what you submitted, and some background on the individual you mentioned, we're launching a formal inquiry. I blinked. Background? He nodded. This isn't her first offense. There are other reports, mostly minor, but one involved tampering with disability access ramps in her previous neighborhood. That made my blood run cold. Here's the kicker, Ramirez continued, flipping a page. You mentioned she's part of the HOA board here, correct? Yes. She acts like the president. Well, there's no record of her holding any legal authority in this HOA. She's not registered. She's not recognized by the state's HOA council. In fact, the HOA itself has some issues that might interest the IRS. I blinked again. Are you saying the HOA is fake? Ramirez smirked. I'm saying it might be operating outside its legal charter, and people like your Karen are using that gray area to enforce power that doesn't exist. I felt my jaw tighten. So what happens next? We build the case. But I need you to stay cool. Document everything, and if she shows up again, call the sheriff. I nodded, but things didn't stay quiet for long. That weekend, someone slashed the back tires of my ATV. They didn't steal anything. Just slashed the tires and spray painted the word mutt on the side in red letters. I knew it was them. I checked the security footage. 2 figures in hoodies, one with a leopard print scarf. Karen's signature. That was enough. I called Ramirez and handed over the video. By Monday morning, things began to unravel for Karen. It started with a knock on her door, 2 officers, a citation in hand for trespassing and service animal harassment. She screamed and cried, saying it was all lies, all fake news, but the footage didn't lie. Nor did the vet report, nor did my legal boundaries on paper. The police left with a warning, another stunt and she'd be charged. But Karen wasn't the kind of person to back down, especially not when her ego was bruised. And I was right. 3 days later, I was walking Buddy along the lower field near the old creek trail when I heard the crunch of gravel again, way too close to my property line. I turned. Karen was standing in the grass, this time with a garden hose in hand, attached to the spigot by the trail. Karen, you better walk away, I warned. But she didn't. Instead, she pointed the hose at Buddy and yelled, "Let's see if you like this, mutt," and pulled the trigger. A hard blast of water hit Buddy in the face. He yelped and slipped backward on the wet grass. And just like that, she'd done it again. But this time, I wasn't the only one watching. A federal agent had been tailing her activities, and this moment was caught in full view. Before she could even reel the hose back in, the agent's vehicle pulled up the dirt trail fast. Ramirez stepped out, badge in hand, voice booming. "Ma'am, put the hose down and step away from the animal." Karen screamed, trying to run, but she didn't get far. Karen stumbled backward, dropping the hose in shock, her cheap sandals slipping in the wet grass. Ramirez didn't wait. He signaled to the two local deputies who had been trailing from a second vehicle parked farther up the hill. They closed in quickly, one of them already reading out her rights. Karen screamed like a banshee. "You can't arrest me. I'm the president of the HOA. This is harassment. He's the one trespassing with that dangerous mutt." But no one was listening. Ramirez calmly stepped forward, flipping open a folder he'd been carrying. "Ma'am, you are being arrested for violating Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act by assaulting a service animal. We also have evidence of repeated harassment, trespassing, and property damage. You've been warned once. Now this is federal." The deputies moved in and handcuffed her right there on the edge of my field. I watched in silence, Buddy by my side, his damp fur sticking to his face but his head held high. "I didn't do anything wrong," she shrieked, jerking against the cuffs. "He's making it all up. That dog's faking it." Ramirez raised an eyebrow. "Are you saying the dog is pretending to be disabled?" That earned a few awkward chuckles from the deputies. Karen looked like she was about to explode, her red face matching the color of the spray paint she'd used on my ATV. As they led her to the patrol car, she twisted around and yelled at me, "You haven't heard the last of me. I have lawyers, friends in the council. This isn't over." But it was, for her. What she didn't know was that her entire tantrum from the moment she aimed the hose had been recorded on multiple cameras, mine, Ramirez's body cam, and even the drone surveillance the DOJ had quietly initiated due to her escalating behavior. That night, I sat quietly on my porch again, watching the stars peek out one by one as Buddy snored beside me. A cool breeze swept through the grass, the kind that carried peace with it. But peace didn't last long, not with an HOA like ours. The very next morning I got a knock on the door. It wasn't the police. It wasn't Ramirez. It was Greg, the tall, lanky guy who had once shown up to tell me to take down my American flag. He was holding a clipboard again, but his face was pale and sweaty. He looked around nervously before speaking. "Hey, Jake, right?" "Yeah. Listen, there's been a bit of confusion lately. We're reassessing the boundaries of the HOA jurisdiction, and we may have overstepped." I tilted my head. "Overstepped? Greg, y'all sent someone onto my property to assault a disabled veteran service dog, then tried to frame the dog for biting a child that doesn't exist." His eyes darted back and forth. "Yeah, well, we didn't approve of that. Karen, she kind of acted on her own." "Really?" "Because your names are all on the newsletters, the memos, the warning letters." He cleared his throat. "She handled the communication." I stepped forward. "Cut the crap, Greg. What do you want?" He shifted his weight. "Look, we're just trying to make this go away, all right? Karen's in custody and the board wants to maybe work something out. Maybe we drop any pending violations and you agree not to sue." That made me laugh. "Greg, you came to a veteran's house with lies, threats, and vandalism. Then your president committed a federal offense? You're worried about lawsuits?" Buddy nearly lost his vision. "You think I'm just going to let that slide?" His mouth opened, but I wasn't done. "I've got the DOJ involved. You're lucky I'm not pushing for criminal charges against every name tied to this nonsense." He looked like he wanted to disappear. "Well, I'll tell the board. But please just think about it." I shut the door in his face. But Greg's visit triggered something in me. I realized it wasn't just about Karen. There was a whole group behind her. Maybe they didn't hold the spray can, but they clapped for her at meetings. They signed the fake violation letters. They stayed quiet when she harassed my dog. And now they wanted to pretend it was all her? No way. I called Ramirez. "I want to go public," I told him. "I want every veteran, every disabled person, every homeowner bullied by an HOA to know they don't have to take this crap." Ramirez agreed. "We're already prepping a press brief. The media's getting interested, especially since there's federal law involved." And sure enough, by the end of the week, the story broke. Veteran service dog assaulted by rogue HOA member. Arrest made. It spread fast. Local news stations picked it up first. Then it made its way to national outlets. They ran the footage of Karen being arrested. They showed Buddy's recovery photos. My calm statement on how service dogs are lifesavers, not pets. And how no one, no HOA, no neighbor, has the right to endanger them. I started getting letters, emails, messages from other veterans, from parents of kids with service dogs, from people who had been harassed by HOAs in their towns but were too scared to speak up. It was overwhelming and inspiring. Still, not everything was resolved. About a week after the media storm, I received a certified envelope from a law firm. Inside was a formal cease and desist notice from the HOA. They were claiming defamation. I read the letter 3 times before bursting out laughing. You sprayed my dog, lied to the sheriff, falsified reports, got caught on video. And now I'm the problem? That night, as I was filing the letter away with my lawyer, my phone buzzed. It was Ramirez again. Hey Jake, thought you should know. We've just uncovered financial records from the HOA's bank account. Looks like Karen and a few others were misusing member dues. Big time. I blinked. How big? Enough to add fraud charges on top of everything else. And Greg? He's next. His name's all over the transactions. And just like that, things went from personal to legal war. I didn't know it yet, but Karen's arrest was just the beginning. Because the deeper the DOJ dug, the more corruption they uncovered in my HOA. And it wasn't just on paper. The next morning I found something terrifying hanging from my gate. A dead rat, nailed to a board with a note that read, "Back off, or next time it's the dog." My stomach dropped. The calm I had built around my home shattered again. And I realized this wasn't over. Not yet. I stared at the board hanging on my front gate, my blood turning ice cold. The rat's limp body swayed slightly in the breeze, the nail pinning it grotesquely in place. The note, scribbled in thick black marker, sent a clear and chilling message. Back off, or next time it's the dog. My hand immediately went to Buddy's vest as he sat beside me, unaware of the fresh threat hanging just feet away. He let out a soft whine, sensing my unease. I crouched down, patting his head, trying to calm both of us. I took a photo of the setup, careful not to touch anything, and then called the sheriff. Within 20 minutes, 2 deputies showed up, one of whom I'd seen the day Karen was arrested. He looked at the message and the rat, his face hardening. This just went from harassment to a serious threat. We'll have to notify the DOJ. You think this is Karen? I asked, not sure what to believe anymore. The deputy nodded slowly. Could be her, could be someone trying to scare you on her behalf. Either way, this isn't just a prank, this is intimidation. They removed the evidence, bagged it, and said they'd be reviewing the security footage from my cameras. By that evening, Ramirez called again. Jake, the threats have crossed the line. I've already filed for a protective order. Until this is sorted, we're assigning surveillance to your ranch. I'll send a team out tomorrow. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Thanks, Ramirez. You've handled this with grace, Jake. But now it's time we go after every last person tied to this mess. And that's exactly what happened. Within days, 3 more members of the so-called HOA board were served with subpoenas. Greg tried to play innocent again, even did a local interview crying about how he was duped by Karen and never agreed to any harassment. But the evidence said otherwise. His signature was on every document sent to me. Meanwhile, the press kept digging, and it wasn't long before a journalist uncovered something else. Karen had been illegally collecting ranch improvement dues from surrounding properties, claiming it was to fund community beautification. In reality, she had used the money to upgrade her own house, a new patio, a hot tub, and even a $3,000 custom-built doghouse for her poodle. The irony stung like salt. The next morning, the sheriff's department swept my property. checking every inch of fence line. Ramirez showed up with a federal investigator from the ATF. Yes, that ATF. They confirmed the threat was real. Someone had tried to start a fire on the outer field but failed because the grass had been soaked from the recent rain. They traced the tire prints, lifted fingerprints from the bottle, and began matching them with known associates of Karen and the HOA board. Then came the break. Surveillance from a gas station 5 miles away caught the same truck filling up 2 nights earlier. The driver? A man named Roy Jenkins, a former board member of a nearby HOA who had recently consulted with Karen's group. They picked him up within 24 hours. Under pressure, Roy cracked. He admitted to helping scare me on Karen's request. She told him I was a violent ex-soldier making threats and that someone had to put the dog down before he hurt someone. Ramirez called me the moment the confession came in. She manipulated people, Jake. But now that guy's facing federal charges, and Karen's looking at additional counts of conspiracy and criminal solicitation. I nodded, silent for a long time. "Do you still want to go forward with the civil suit?" he asked. I didn't hesitate. "Absolutely. I want this on the record. I want every HOA in the country to know. If you go after someone's service dog, their livelihood, their peace, you will pay." But even as the pieces started falling into place, I still felt uneasy. Buddy was getting better. His eyes had fully healed, and his alertness returned. But he had grown more cautious. He wouldn't stray more than a few feet from me, and loud sounds made him flinch. He was a trained service dog, but even heroes get scared. I started taking him to a local veteran-friendly dog therapist who volunteered her time helping service animals recover from trauma. She told me something that stuck with me. Dogs don't hold grudges, but they do remember fear. Every time he looks to you and sees you calm and steady, that memory gets a little softer. So I made a vow that day. No matter what came next, more lawsuits, more press, more threats, I would protect Buddy like he protected me. That night, while sipping coffee on the porch, my phone buzzed again. Ramirez again. "Jake, you sitting down?" My heart skipped. "What is it?" "We just got a federal court date. Karen's being transferred to a detention facility pending trial. Her bail was denied." I stood up, stunned. Denied? She lied on her financial disclosures, claimed she made $3,000 a month. Turns out she has multiple rental properties under fake LLCs and offshore accounts. I laughed in disbelief. So, she's going down for more than assault. People began to distance themselves from her quickly. Neighbors who once sat silently during HOA meetings started speaking up. One elderly couple, the Winstons, told a news crew that Karen had fined them $500 for non-standard grass height after their lawnmower broke. Another man said she threatened to revoke his walking trail privileges because his dog barked too loud. But here's where it all turned even uglier. One evening, just a few weeks after the arrest, I was headed out to the barn when I noticed a truck idling near the back fence. Its headlights were off, but I could see the shadow of someone crouching down. I called out, "Can I help you?" No answer. I flicked on my flashlight and pointed it at the figure. It was a man, probably in his late 40s, wearing a camo hoodie and gloves. In his hand was a bottle of what looked like lighter fluid. Before I could even take another step, he bolted. He tossed the bottle, jumped into the truck and sped off, tires spitting gravel behind him. I ran to the spot. The bottle was labeled BBQ starter, but taped to it was another note. "Last warning, dogs burn too." That was it. I didn't wait. I called 911, then Ramirez. This had gone from HOA harassment to domestic terrorism. Ramirez chuckled. "Oh, much more." And just when I thought it couldn't get more ridiculous. The very next morning I found a flyer taped to my mailbox. In big bold letters it read, "Emergency HOA meeting. Vote to remove Walker's property from community grounds." They were still trying to kick me out. That's when I realized the war wasn't over yet. But I had something now I didn't have before. Proof. The law. and a loyal dog who never once left my side. The emergency HOA meeting was scheduled for 7 p.m. on a Thursday, held, of all places, in the community clubhouse that sat on the edge of the neighborhood, 2 miles from my ranch. It was the same building Karen once used to hold her bogus board meetings and distribute phony citations. This time, however, the air was different. The flyer had already made its rounds through town and online. A local reporter even messaged me asking if I planned to attend. I did, but I wasn't going alone. I brought Buddy, of course, now wearing his bright red vest with a small U.S. flag patch sewn onto the side. I also brought Ramirez at his request, and 2 veterans from the local VFW, both of whom had quietly endured similar HOA harassment over the years. And to top it off, I walked into that meeting with a folder filled with legal documents, federal findings, and photographic evidence. When I opened the clubhouse door, the room fell silent. Greg was standing at the front with his clipboard, face pale as flour. The few remaining board members sat beside him, clearly rattled by what had happened to Karen, and now trying to distance themselves from it. Dozens of residents filled the folding chairs. Some whispered. Others straight up stared. They didn't expect me to show up, let alone with backup. Greg cleared his throat nervously. Before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone this is a peaceful meeting. We are here to address community concerns. I raised my hand. Greg froze, eyes darting toward me. Yes, Mr. Walker. I'd like to speak. He shifted uncomfortably. Well, technically only members of the HOA board are permitted to. Ramirez stepped forward, flashing his DOJ badge. He'll speak. Gasps filled the room. People turned their heads, craning their necks to get a better view of the badge. Greg stepped back, mouth open like a caught fish. I walked to the front, Buddy trotting beside me. I placed my folder on the table. I'm not here to shout. I'm not here to threaten. I'm here to tell the truth, I said. 3 months ago, I was minding my own business on my ranch when Karen, your so-called president, trespassed onto my land and sprayed my service dog in the face. Not because he barked, not because he was aggressive, because she wanted control. A woman in the crowd gasped. I continued. She said I was too different to live here. She said my dog didn't belong, that I didn't belong. Greg tried to interrupt, but Ramirez held up a hand. I opened the folder and began passing out printed pages, images of Buddy's injuries, photos of Karen with the spray can, stills from surveillance, and the vet's signed report. Then came the legal statements, proof the HOA had been illegally redrawing jurisdiction lines and operating without proper authority. People began whispering. Murmuring turned to low murmurs of outrage. Karen broke federal law, I said. She's now facing trial, and her bail was denied. The DOJ is investigating your board for fraud and harassment, and someone affiliated with this group tried to burn my dog alive. Silence. Ramirez stepped forward. What Mr. Walker hasn't told you is that he didn't retaliate. He documented. He protected his animal, his home, and his peace with the law. That's why I'm here. Because what happened to him is happening across the country, and it ends now. Greg's voice trembled as he tried to salvage control. This isn't a criminal hearing. We're here to vote on removing Mr. Walker's property from community oversight. A woman in the back stood up. You're still trying to punish him after everything? More voices joined her. This is insane. He's got federal proof. You said Karen was acting alone. People were standing up now, turning on the board. One man pointed at Greg. How much of our dues went into Karen's jacuzzi? Greg stammered. I didn't know. I have bank records that say otherwise, I said, flipping to the page in the folder with Greg's signature approving a $4,800 landscaping allowance that went straight into Karen's backyard spa. And that was the end of the meeting. People stormed out. Someone threw a clipboard at the floor. One of the board members started crying. Another demanded a vote to dissolve the board entirely. By the time the night was over, the HOA was effectively leaderless and under full federal investigation. But the fire hadn't died completely. 2 nights later, just as I was starting to relax again, I woke up to flashing red and blue lights outside my ranch. My heart dropped. I ran to the front door, Buddy at my heels. A fire truck and 2 sheriff's cruisers were parked by my barn. Flames licked at the side of my hay shed. Someone had tried to set it ablaze. Again. Thankfully, my neighbor Rob, a retired firefighter who'd been quietly watching over the place since the media circus started, had seen the smoke and called it in instantly. He even caught a glimpse of the suspect. Black hoodie, same build as Roy, possibly another friend of Karen's. As firefighters doused the flames, a deputy approached me. "It wasn't random," he said. "They used accelerant again, same as before. But we'll get him. Cameras might have caught something." I looked at the smoldering ash, heart pounding. My ranch, my peace was under siege. Again. But something shifted that night. The next morning, neighbors I'd never met came by with baked goods, bottled water, and offers to help rebuild the shed. One woman brought her son. He had a prosthetic leg and a service dog of his own. "Your story helped him feel seen," she said, eyes wet. "Thank you for not backing down." For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt hopeful. Later that day, Ramirez called. "We've arrested another man. Name's Ethan Brooks. He's connected to Karen and Roy. He confessed to the arson attempt. We're charging him with felony arson and attempted animal cruelty." I sat on the porch again that night, Buddy curled beside me. We'd been through fire, lies, threats, and betrayal, but we were still standing. The flames couldn't break us, but I had a feeling the final blow was still on the way. Because Karen was still sitting in jail, and her trial was just days away. The courthouse was packed the day of Karen's trial. Reporters lined the steps. Protesters and supporters of service animals stood holding signs like, "Protect our heroes, 2-legged and 4," and "Justice for Buddy." Inside, the air was tense. Karen sat at the defendant's table in a gray suit that looked 2 sizes too big, her once smug expression gone. Her lawyer whispered in her ear constantly, but it didn't seem to help. She looked tired, defeated. I sat in the front row beside Ramirez, with Buddy lying quietly at my feet, his vest freshly cleaned and his head resting on his paws. Even in a room full of whispers and tension, Buddy remained calm. That's what made him special. The judge, a stern-looking woman with silver glasses and a sharp voice, began by listing the charges: assaulting a federally protected service animal, criminal trespassing, conspiracy to commit fraud, solicitation of arson, and harassment of a disabled veteran. Karen's lawyer tried everything, blaming stress, misunderstanding, even mental health, but nothing worked. The evidence was overwhelming: video footage, eyewitnesses, financial records, and Roy's full confession tying her to every malicious act. Then came my turn to speak. I stepped up to the witness stand, looked around, then down at Buddy, who wagged his tail softly and said, "I served my country for 12 years. I came home with injuries people can't always see. Buddy has saved my life more times than I can count. He's not just a dog. He's family. Karen didn't just attack an animal. She attacked a lifeline. And when the law tried to intervene, she doubled down with lies, threats, and violence. It didn't have to be this way. But when you think you're above the law, eventually the law catches up." The courtroom was silent. The judge took it all in, and after a long pause, gave her verdict. Guilty on all counts. Karen was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison, with no chance of parole for the first 3. She was also fined and banned from participating in any HOA activity for the rest of her life. The judge also ordered mandatory mental health counseling and restitution to me for Buddy's medical bills and the damage to my property. Outside the courthouse, the media flooded me with questions. I gave a short statement. I didn't go through all this for revenge. I went through it because I believe in standing up for what's right. No one, veteran, civilian, or animal, deserves to be abused in silence, and we won't be silent anymore. That night I returned to the ranch. The stars were out again, clear and bright. My neighbors had finished rebuilding my hay shed while I was away. A new fence gate had been installed, this one made of solid steel with a fresh sign, protected by federal law and one loyal dog. Buddy ran the length of the field and back, barking joyfully. I sat on the porch with a glass of lemonade watching him, knowing the battle was over, and we had won. From that day on, peace returned to the ranch. The HOA board was fully dissolved by vote. A new group was formed with real oversight and real rules. They even created a special committee to support veterans and people with service animals in the area. I was asked to help lead it, but I declined. I'd done my part. I just wanted my quiet and my dog. Buddy continued to serve faithfully, and in time, he began to heal emotionally too. No more flinching at hoses, no more cowering near fences, just a happy, devoted dog doing what he was trained to do, save lives, one quiet moment at a time. And me? I finally slept soundly again. So if you're watching this, and you've ever been bullied by a power-hungry HOA, mistreated because of a disability, or threatened for standing your ground, you are not alone. This story is more than just about me and my dog. It's about every person who's ever been told to sit down and shut up when they were right. And sometimes, all it takes is one voice to change everything. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to smash that like button, leave a comment with your thoughts down below, and tell us, have you ever had a wild HOA experience? We'd love to hear your story. Don't forget to subscribe for more unbelievable real-life drama, justice served cold, and stories that prove truth is always stronger than lies. See you in the next video.